Hi, y'all. Welcome to another episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. This week, my guest is Hailey Hudson, who is a copywriter, a content writer. And I think I'll preface this interview by saying that Hailey represents a group of people that I keep meeting people from this group. And so to give you the example, in the world of content and content marketing, especially the sort of entrepreneurial side of our field, content is one of those things where you can use it to build a freelance career, build a consulting career. There's a lot you can do with content on your own. You don't necessarily need a full-time employer to do it. And so it's an area where you sometimes run into sort of that entrepreneur mythology, right? Where living the lifestyle entrepreneur, right? Laptop lifestyle on the beach, doing your work whenever you want to, drinking some sort of fruity drink with an umbrella in it. And look, like, I got nothing wrong with that, like, right? If you are pursuing that sort of lifestyle and you're able to make that work, like, please do it. I have no issue with that. And there are plenty of people who are able to make that sort of thing work. But Hailey represents sort of a different side of what I would call lifestyle entrepreneurism, which is they're not building this sort of dream life the way that the sort of digital nomad life or anything like that. Instead, they find themselves for one reason or another unable to participate in sort of the normal workforce. And so, in Hailey's case, Hailey has fairly significant health challenges that prevent her from being able to work a 9-to-5 job. And so for her, finding freelancing and then building a freelance business, that's her income. And it allows her to do that in a way that, and you'll hear it in her words, allows her to protect her health as best she can and rest when she needs to, and still be able to have a career and a lifestyle and an income and do work that's fulfilling. And so I met, to give you another answer, I met a single mom not too long ago on a Zoom call. We were on a call for a completely separate reason, and she started to tell me her story. She's the full-time caretaker for her son who has a disability. And so for her, like, just again, the normal sort of 9-to-5 lifestyle, 9-to-5 working arrangement, even with remote work, it just wasn't possible for her. And so she had to find a different way, a different lifestyle, in order to be able to have a career, have a job, to be able to bring in income and support her family. And so those of you who are in this situation where you're in this game not because of some some dream of some thing that that the rest of us sometimes are building toward, but you're in this sort of freelance consulting, work for yourselves, to have your own business kind of thing, because it's the best option for you, because you're not really able to participate in the regular workforce for whatever reason. Hailey, I think, does a really great job in this episode, sort of talking through kind of the implications of that and how that works for her, and how she's able to, as best she can, find some balance between the challenges and rigors of growing and running a freelance business, which many of us are aware of, and still being able to rest and maintain her health as best she can. So with that, I will let Hailey speak to the rest of it. And this is me and Hailey Hudson in conversation, talking about growing a freelance business. Hey, Hailey, thanks for joining me this morning.
Happy to be here.
The note that you sent me about your story is remarkable, and I can't wait to dig into it. But first, introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you coming from? And what do you do? Or where are you calling from? And what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Hailey. I am calling from Atlanta, which is where I live, which is where I grew up, about an hour north of the city. And I am a freelance writer and content marketer, and I work primarily with companies in the healthcare and digital marketing industries.
Cool. What do you do for them?
I write a lot of blog posts. That's at least 75% of what I do. And then here and there, I will write emails, social media copy. I have a client right now where I am just going through and optimizing existing content for SEO. But I'd say the bulk of what I do is writing blog posts and articles. So long form type stuff.
Yeah. That's what I did for a really long time. I dug up some of your work and looked. So, how did you get started? Like, how did you get to be a person who does this kind of work?
Well, 6 or 7 years ago, this was not something that I planned on. This was probably not something that I knew existed as a career option, honestly. I was in high school and I was planning to do the whole, I was touring colleges, I was applying to colleges, all of that. But halfway through high school, I had always had health issues. And then about halfway through high school, I got really sick. And the closer I got to graduation, the more it became apparent that college was not really going to be an option because of my health issues. And so I realized I needed a job or a career that I could do from home, that was flexible. And I had always loved to write. I had written novels and stories for years growing up and was planning to major in English most likely. And so I started researching what kind of writing jobs were out there and started submitting. I started with magazines. I started submitting some pieces to magazines. And then from there, I kind of discovered the broader world of freelance writing and content marketing. So I started doing this right out of high school, and that's kind of where it all started.
That's okay. So there's so much there that I want to ask you. I think so. First thing to say is you represent, I think, your story is, I've heard a story. I've heard versions of stories kind of like yours a few different times, and they're usually not in public, right? Usually I hear them when I have like a one-on-one call with somebody talking about something else. And I think that the normal, like the narrative that you hear out there for freelance, right, is like work your way to freedom and like work on the beach with your laptop with a fruity drink in your hand and like have this awesome lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. And like that stuff is, don't get me wrong, like that stuff is real. And there's something to all of that. But there's this whole other like huge group of people for whom just like traditional work arrangements just don't work for whatever reason. And I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Like there's one person in our community who I talked to many years ago who she's got a son who's disabled, and she's his full-time like care provider, and she can't go to the office. She can't do a normal like 9 to 5 schedule, even with remote work. And so for her, freelancing is like, it was just the only option really that she was able to make work.
Right.
And I know like another friend of somebody I work with that's a very talented writer who worked directly for me for several years was had a chronic autoimmune disease, and just went through spells where she just couldn't do much. And so for her, she found freelancing, and that became the thing that she could do and make money doing. And so what is that? I guess when you sort of bounce around this whole world of like meeting other freelancers and sort of entertaining this narrative of stuff, like this is just, you have a different experience than I think what the normal narrative when it comes to freelancing. You're not necessarily freelancing your way to financial freedom. This is a different story for you.
Yes.
What I guess when you started looking for different like opportunities, you said you found magazines and stuff. Did you even know that like you could write for like businesses and those kinds of things? Because I'm not sure that like those of us who came up like reading novels and writing short stories in high school, and I'm one of those kids too. I'm not sure that we knew what we had. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure that we knew how valuable our skill was.
Right. I didn't. I had no idea. And, when I decided that, when I realized that I wasn't able to go to college, I was initially just going to take a gap year and see if my health improved, see what happened. And which it did not, spoiler alert, it has continued to get worse and worse. But during that gap year, I was focusing, I did a couple different things. I worked for a local nonprofit. I was well enough to coach softball at that time. But I was focusing on writing. And really what I was doing was I was submitting my short fiction stories to magazines. I was working on my novels. So it really took quite a few months before I even started discovering magazines that wanted nonfiction, just articles, just more journalistic type stuff. And then it probably took me, I don't know, a year to discover that world of companies, like you said. And once I realized that was an option, I started seeing it everywhere. And I started realizing everybody needs a writer, But yeah, it definitely did take me some time to get to that place and to realize that was an option at all, and also an option that was a lot more sustainable and lucrative than just submitting to magazines here and there.
Right. I love that. I think there's so many people who have that story, meaning like they didn't necessarily go looking, but they found this world somehow along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What was there like a moment, like when you had like an aha moment where you realized this could really be a thing? Was there may not be, I don't know, but was there like a first client who sort of opened your eyes to this world?
So the first client that I ever got was a marketing agency that worked specifically with CrossFit boxes or CrossFit gyms. So very, very niche kind of thing. And they paid me, I'm trying to think. It wasn't great. I want to say it was like $50 an article. But at the time, being I think I was 18, and coming off of, a babysitting job in high school that was my only real work experience, I thought that was great. I was hooked. And then after my gap year, I was sort of weighing out options and thinking about what was physically possible, what I wanted to do. And I think at that point I was making about $800 a month consistently from freelancing. And so again, at the time that felt awesome to me, but I also recognized that, if I was going to make this a thing, if I was going to move out at some point, hopefully, that it needed to be a lot more, of course. And so that was kind of the point, after about a year of dabbling in it and sort of getting my feet wet and seeing what was out there. I think at that point, I kind of realized that this was possible. I just maybe couldn't do it on my own without a little bit of mentorship. And so at that point, I registered in Carol Tice's DIN 2X program. And so from there, I was able to, I think I actually 7X'd my income or something as a result of what I learned in that. And then everything from there, I moved out a year later. And so that program was really what sort of kickstarted, not so much the writing side of it, because I already knew how to write, but that really taught me how to run a freelance business.
Carol Tice is TICE. She has a group called the Freelance Writers Den, which is one of the better ones around there, one of the better programs around. Just for anybody who heard that and was like, wait, what was that? So clearly not a paid endorsement, just like Carol's one of the good ones in this world.
Yes.
It's so for anybody listening to this, just so you know, like it took you about a year, Hailey. Like this is what it took me too. Like I was doing it for about a year, kind of a little on and off. Like I was making, I'd make like $500 in 1 month. And like, I remember my first 4-figure month almost by accident, because I was doing it all as like a side hustle back then. And I was like, well, that was cool. I took my wife to like the nicest restaurant we'd ever been to just one night, just because
that's awesome.
I had cash to do it. And I think the bill was like, it was like $60 or something. And that was way more than we'd ever paid for a dinner. But I had the same feeling, meaning like, this is great as like a little bit of extra income, but this wasn't anywhere near what it needed to be if I was going to do this like full time.
Right.
And I mean, that was way back in 2014. And so, but it took me about a year to really sort of like get enough, like figure it out enough to where I felt like, okay, like I think if I leaned into this, I could really do this. And I've heard like I've mentored a dozen people now personally one-on-one, and like tons of people in the content marketing labs I've talked to over the year. It seems like that's pretty common, meaning about a year. Like it takes most people about a year to kind of, no matter what they do, to kind of figure out kind of their way through. Some a little faster, some a little slower. But what, one thing that sometimes happens, people are like, I'm going to become a freelancer. Like they decide that today, and then they are thinking about quitting their job tomorrow. And I always want to be like, okay. Like, it's cool. You can make that decision to become a freelancer now, but maybe don't quit your job tomorrow because you could do all this on the side and learn how to do it until you really have well, you're making $800 a month kind of like here and there. Like that's a pretty good, I mean, that's a really good start. So, so for those of you who are like, it takes a while. It's hard. You have to learn a lot. Yes. And a lot of us, I think, have that story. So I wanted to sort of point that out in your story as well. I love that you said like you got paid $50 for your first job. So I've told this story before, but my very first job was on what used to be, it's called Elance. It was a website. It's the website that predates Upwork. So back then there were two job sites. One was called Odesk, one was called Elance, and one of them bought the other. I forgot now which one bought the other. And then they merged to become what is now Upwork. But it was like August of 2013. I had no idea how to land clients. I knew I needed to make a little bit of extra money to like cover an upcoming, like my student loan was going to come due. I was going to have to start paying on it at the end of the year. And I finally talked this guy into letting me like edit he was doing these like job listings on like monster.com and indeed.com. And he was trying to recruit like high-end accountants, like at these like big professional accounting firms, but his writing was so terrible that people were writing him to like ask, is this real? Like this looks like a scam because the English is so bad. Oh goodness. And so he paid me $5 to go through and clean one up as a test project. And like Elance took its cut, and it was $4.36 is what I made on that one. And I remember being like, okay, this is awesome. Meaning like, I remember feeling like, I was so hooked. You used the word hooked, and that's how I felt too. I was like, somebody just paid me to do something, and it wasn't like on a paycheck for a regular job. I didn't have to get dressed and go to work to do this. Right. That feeling of empowerment on a $4.36, profit job was. And I don't know that I've ever lost that, right? There's still something like amazing right now today. I mean, just this morning I announced like a premium membership thing in my community, and like in my email, people are signing, I can see people signing up, and just the ability to sort of create something and sell it and have somebody actually buy it and then pay you. Right. There's something so empowering about that. Is that how you felt as well?
It was for sure. And honestly, still, I think it's been over 5 years now that I've been doing this full time. And I don't know if that ever quite loses its magic, especially now that obviously the sums that I'm getting now are a lot more than $50 per piece. And I've been able to work with some really big name clients. I've written for Dell. I've written for HP. I've written college textbooks for Barnes & Noble Education, which just made me laugh since I obviously didn't go to college myself. So yeah, I think there's a part of that, as I continue to reach new milestones and new benchmarks and even, goals that I didn't even know that I had, but then it happens and I'm like, wow, that is so cool. I think that's something I really enjoy about it, is just that there's always something new, and there's always an exciting new project. You never get bored. And I think for me, it never quite loses that excitement, which is cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. So let me sort of like, I got so many other additional questions to ask you about like that kind of stuff, but let me sort of bring your story up to the present. So you start doing this, it's 6 years ago. You magazines for a while. A ton of writers start that because they don't know anything else, right? They're like, I think I could publish magazines. And then you find this world of business writing and you start to sort of land some work. What was, so CrossFit gyms the first time. And then how did you get from there? Like, well, sort of, so did it just start to sort of pick up? Did you start to land, like, did you get like a second client? And then like, and actually let me step back. Like, how did you get that first client? Because that's always a struggle for some people. How did you get that CrossFit gym? I'm sorry, it was the agency that worked with the CrossFit gym.
Yes, it was an agency. So that first client, I believe I found them on freelancewritinggigs.com. Back then I was spending a lot of time on, ProBlogger, which I don't recommend necessarily, but I spent a lot of time there at the beginning. I was on Upwork and all of those places. And I before I started Din2X, I had gotten, I want to say 2, 3, 4 other clients on my own. One of them was a website that reviewed running shoes. In high school, before I got really sick, I was an athlete. I played travel softball. I was very into fitness. And so initially that was the niche that I was trying to, focus on: fitness, nutrition, all that sort of thing. Right. So I had a few clients in that area. And then with Din2X, I started reaching out to clients on my own. I started learning how to kind of vet clients before reaching out and look for higher quality companies that would be a good long-term partnership. So things really picked up from there. I expanded into a couple of different areas. In addition to fitness, I was writing about education. I was writing in the pet industry, which I still write in those industries here and there. And then initially I had been in the fitness area, and then I sort of expanded from there into healthcare. And then I also started writing with digital marketing clients quite a bit. So, agencies who it's for their own blog, on their own website, that sort of thing, with digital marketing advice. And I think it's been really interesting for me moving into the healthcare space, which was kind of a natural transition from fitness. But I think I've spoken with several people before who, you mentioned this at the beginning, it might be freelancers who are, the reason they do this, like me, is because they physically cannot work another job. But that's not something they really broadcast. And at the beginning of my career, I was like that as well. That wasn't something that I really talked about publicly online. I know that a lot of people don't feel comfortable disclosing their disability to an employer for good reason. And I'm not necessarily encouraging anyone to do that. But just for me personally, it has been really interesting that I have been able to land so many healthcare clients because I can tell them, I can speak to your target audience because I am your target audience. I call myself a professional patient sometimes. I love it. I started working with a home health company about 6 months ago, and I just flat out told them in our initial call, I use a home health company. I have a permanent feeding tube. I can't eat or drink by mouth. And I use a home health company to get my supplies every month, my formula and everything I need. And so, of course, for them, that was, well, yes, absolutely, we want you to write for us. So again, I'm not necessarily encouraging anyone to do this. This is a very personal decision for everybody of whether to share or how much to share. But it has been really interesting and really cool to me to see that I can use this life experience to actually get clients in this space.
So that's incredible. I sometimes coach people and they have something that they're sitting on and they don't even know it's an advantage. They just have to position it to the right people. And like, this might be the best example of that I've ever heard. Meaning like, they'll say like, I can't do this because, I don't have this experience. And for whatever reason, like there are these sort of markets where like your disadvantage becomes your advantage. If you just sort of find the right people, right? Like, and that's exactly what you've done. How did you initially start to sort of you said you reached out to these kinds of people. Like what did that look like? Were you sending emails? Were you calling them, getting introductions? How did you make those connections?
My this always makes me laugh a little bit because my grandmother, who knows what I do in a general sense, but she
I do know. So I'm trying not to laugh too hard to get the audio to come through. But my 82-year-old grandma, like I go. She lives across town, and I go to her house sometimes, and I work from her house because she's got good Wi-Fi. And she's like, "What do you do all day?" And I'm like, I talk to people around the world, and she's like, "Can you get paid to do that?"
My grandmother uses the term. She understands that, I write for companies, but the process of getting those clients, she uses the term pounding the pavement. She'll say, so you just sort of pound the pavement and go find clients. And I don't know that I've ever met with a client in person in all of these years, but so it kind of makes me laugh. But yes, so it was lots of emails for the initial outreach, and then after that, I remember years ago when I was really building my business, I would sometimes have like 4 phone calls a day with potential clients who were interested in discussing. So I was still on job boards a little bit at that point, but I was trying to move away from that and just reach out directly to clients. And then over the years, it has also become a lot of networking and referrals. I am always getting work from other freelance writers who, they had someone reach out to them. It wasn't quite in their area of expertise. They don't have time. They pass it to me. I do the same for them. But initially it was a lot of emails, a lot of pounding the inboxes, I guess, and just trying to get work that way.
How did you find people's emails? Because that's just a question that comes up from time to time. I know how I do it, but how do you do it?
I would sometimes people have it on their LinkedIn. Sometimes they have it on their website, the company website. If it's not on the company website, or if that specific, if the, content manager or marketing manager, if their specific email is not on the website, I would sort of just look at whatever emails were available and see, okay, does this company use first name dot last name format or first initial last name? How does that work? And just make my best educated guess that I could.
Yeah, that's exactly how I do it. So, and to give one tactical tip on that, if you go to Google and so say it's acme.com, right? Or whatever the company is. You just put the double quote mark and then the @ symbol and then acme.com and then the close quote symbol. And what that will do is it will tell Google, find me this exact set of characters out on the web. And I almost always can find somebody from a company who has their email somewhere. And it'll be on the last slide of a presentation deck from a conference from 4 years ago or something. You know what I mean? Like there's all these just random things where somebody will put a PR contact somewhere. It's almost always a marketing person's email or a PR person's email. And if I have one email from that company, then I have the whole company's email.
Right.
Because that's exactly what you're saying. Because it'll be first initial last name or first name or first name _ last name.
Yes.
And that's that works. I don't know. For me, it works about 90% of the time, maybe. And like,
that's pretty good.
That's good enough for me.
Yes.
So that's how I do it. So that's, there are tools out there that Hunter is the best one that I've seen that like aggregates some of these things. And if you want to try that, you can.
I used to use that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty good one. I usually will I'll look something up in Hunter, but then I'll also do what I just said, like the Google trick, just to see if I can confirm it. I mean, all that takes like a minute to do. So,
right.
Anyway, and agencies, by the way, if you're going after agencies, almost always have their emails like on the website. Like you can, usually it's just a button. It says like email this person.
They make it very easy.
Yeah. And it's different when you're going after companies. You sometimes have to do a little bit of work. So very cool. So I'm trying to cover the bases, and I want to get back to you, to your specifics. So I think so again, like your progression of how this worked, like same as me. Like you have to pound pavement. I'm going to start using that. You have to pound the pavement for a long time, meaning like a couple years, right? Because at that point, nobody knows you and you don't have all these connections. But I love how you said that like you're getting a lot of referrals from other freelancers. And I think that's maybe one that I haven't personally talked enough about, because it happens all the time, which is like, if you do your network, if you work your network correctly, and I think you probably had it from Carol's community, right? Is this where you met a lot of people?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a great example of the power of joining a network like that, because if you think about those people as horizontal connections, right? And it's like, oh no, these people are my competition. Actually, no, those people are your referral partners.
Yes, exactly.
This is how it works. And so over time, people have gotten to know me through my community, right? And they know that I work in software and SaaS. That's just what I do. Like, this is like, I have one particular niche. This is the type of thing that I do. And for a while they knew that I did writing. And then later they learned that I started to move into like more consulting roles, and then started to work like for companies. The community knew that. And then they just show up in my Facebook DMs or in my email or in my LinkedIn. Like, hey, are you interested in this? Like, I talked to this guy and I can't do what he wants me to do, but I think you can. Do you want this? And I got so many clients that way over the years. And the full-time job that I'm in today, which was an amazing opportunity, came to me that way. That network of people, like, who know the people that you're trying to get to, is worth the effort of developing those relationships, because that's where so much referral work happens just behind the scenes. So the trick to it is you have to have a niche, right? That people know. You have to, but like, it really helps if people know that, like, Hailey does the healthcare stuff. Like, you should send that to Hailey. She'd be great at it. Right. That really makes a big difference when you get into the kind of that stage. But that's usually 2-3 years in, like, before people start to sort of get those relationships. So I love it. That's inbound. That's inbound at work for in the case of freelancers. Okay, so we brought you up to the present. Are you doing, like, I don't know what, like, do you want to share like numbers at all? Like, you don't have to, but is there, like, do you have financial targets of growth targets going forward?
My biggest goal with freelancing is not really a financial number necessarily, but just to make what I need to make without killing my body, if that makes sense. Right now I'm averaging about $8,000 a month. That is with the help of a virtual assistant. I have her for about 10 hours a week. And I know that I could have a 10K month if I really tried, but I'm not going to, because I just think it would be too much. I'm happy where I am.
Cost, right?
There is, yes. And I don't work. I'm a full-time freelancer in the sense that this is my only job, but I don't work full-time hours. I work I'd say about 20 hours a week is probably where I average out. And my income fluctuates month to month. Sometimes I'll have a month where I'm in and out of the hospital a lot. I make, only 3,000 or 4,000. The last couple months I've been stable-ish, so it's been higher. And that's okay with me. I don't have any debt. I was very fortunate and privileged to be able to live at home with my parents during the time where I was starting up my business. So I built up a nice savings account. So I feel very fortunate to be in a good place financially. And my goal is really just, again, to just take care of my body and also to save my energy for, I love to write novels. I take voice lessons. Sometimes I just want to meet a friend for coffee on a weekday. So that's really my goal, is just to build a career that is, yes, financially sustainable, but also just makes sense, in the context of the rest of my life.
Oh, that's so good. You're a lifestyle entrepreneur, but like not a lifestyle entrepreneur, if you know what I mean. Like,
yes.
You're not one of those lifestyle entrepreneurs. So if we step back, and I want you to think about other people who might be in some sort of similar situation, either through health reasons or like situational reasons. Like, I mean, we have in our community, we have single moms who are trying to make this work, right? Single mom. In fact, I've met a single dad who's trying to make this work, and he just can't work normal hours. So right. He does it like, it's like 3 hours in the morning, and then he does it after his kids go to bed. Because one of his kids has a health issue that's like, again, full-time caretaker for him, or he is the full-time caretaker for his son. What advice do you have for people like that, to make this work?
I'd say these are a lot of things we've already discussed here today. But first of all, to just learn about freelance writing, teach yourself about the different options out there, what you think you would be best at, what would be most lucrative. I did a little bit of more copywriting work, more short form stuff years ago, and discovered that was really not my forte. So content marketing was a better fit for me. It's high paying. I enjoy it. I feel like it comes more naturally. So to teach yourself about freelance writing, about what's out there. Second thing I would say is, again, we just discussed this, but really try to find or build a community or a network of people who can mentor you, peer friends who can pass you work, whatever that looks like. And then this is something else that we touched on earlier, but someone asked me earlier this week, I was doing an interview with a student who, I think it was for her capstone. She had to interview someone who was in a field that she wanted to work in. And one of her questions for me was, for someone who wants to get started freelance writing, what experience do they need? And I thought it was almost the wrong question. I think what you should ask is, what experience do I already have, whether that's career experience or life experience or whatever, and how can I take that and use it to prove to potential clients that I have the experience to write about this topic. So, for me, that I didn't have a lot of experience coming out of high school, going into this career, but, my passion for fitness and then my experience in the healthcare world as a patient. After high school, I worked for a nonprofit that tutored refugee kids. I was our site coordinator. And so I would work with teachers and parents and the students. And so that gave me a natural segue to write about education, or even just being a lifelong pet owner. My cat, if my video was on, you would see my cat right here in the back of my in the back of my screen. And that's something that's really great when I get on a phone call or a video call with clients in the pet industry, that I don't even have to say anything. Like, as soon as my video comes on, they can just tell that I could be a good fit for them, because I am obviously a pet owner. And so I think just thinking creatively about whatever experience you have, and then using that really strategically to position yourself to write for those types of clients.
Right. That's how you find your niche for the first clients. I think that's great advice, Hailey. I think so. To tell my version of that story, I went to engineering school the first 2 years of college, thinking I was going to be an engineer, and 20-year-old Nathan was didn't have his priorities in order to do homework. Let's put it that way. Not a good enough student. Let's put it that way. I think I was always smart enough to do it, but I just didn't get the work done. And so I basically bombed out of engineering school. My advisor was like, you either have to change majors or you're going to fail. Like, you're going to be out of here. That's how I became an English major, by the way, is I just decided to do something else. And I had always loved writing and reading. So, but many years, like 10 years later, I started freelancing, and I thought that for years I had thought, oh, well, I just wasted like 2 years and however many tens of thousands of dollars on engineering school. And 10 years later, I was in a conversation with a manufacturing company talking to this engineer about writing an ebook for their really specialized like drill bits and taps.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, this is bizarre. And I told him, I'm like, I took 2 years of engineering school. You don't want me to build your bridge, but I understand how it works. And he was like, oh, so you can translate engineer into English. I was like, yes, I can. And
wow.
I used that phrase. I stole that phrase from him and used it every chance I got from that point on. Because as soon as I said,
perfect.
like, if I said to a developer or a technology person or an engineer, and that was who I ended up working with, I'd say, oh yeah, I translate engineering to English. They immediately understood what I meant. Like, they got it immediately. And there just aren't that many writers who can do that. And I think it's so similar to yours. Like, I'm a professional patient, right? Like, you've found that way to communicate your unique, like, you're not just a freelance writer, you're Hailey, and you're the professional patient. And
right.
Like, I got you.
Yes.
That is so good. So, what else?
I mean, I think that pretty much catches us up to today. I have a lot of people ask me how to get started freelancing. And those are really the main things I say, are just to just learn about it. Just think about, what experience you have, choose your niche from there, find your community. And then, there's a point too where you can learn about freelancing all you want, but at some point you have to actually start putting yourself out there and sending those emails, making those phone calls, pounding the pavement, however that looks for you. Right. Don't get stuck in the research phase for too long. There comes a point where you just kind of have to jump in and get your feet wet and keep learning from there. But those are the main things that I would say, I think.
I love it. What, do you have any questions you want to ask me?
Ooh, questions for you. Let's see. Well, you've been in the content marketing field for at least twice as long as me, if not 2008 longer.
Now. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Much longer than me.
14 years.
So that's a long time. So I'm curious, what changes you have seen during that time, whether that's changes in best practices. I'm sure SEO has evolved a ton since then, or what clients want. Just what are some of the biggest changes that you have seen in the content marketing field over this time period? Right.
So a ton, right? So 2008 was when the word content marketing wasn't even as popular as it wasn't even as well known. We didn't even know we were doing content marketing. Back then. We called it email marketing, or we called it newsletters. It didn't have this sort of umbrella term. Joe Pulizzi gave us the term content marketing, and he actually, he was using it before that, but there's this sort of famous instance where he was on a webinar with this, on the webinar was like David Meerman Scott and, several other people that are like the originals from the world of content marketing. And Joe was just like, he was just an attendee this webinar. He wasn't like on the panel or anything. And he asked a question like in the chat, like, do you think, like, what do you think about content marketing? And somebody had to explain like what content marketing was to the group of people, even though they had all been doing it.
Right.
And so that was one of these moments where like the word content marketing broke through into the sort of broader consciousness. Content Marketing Institute was founded right around then. But I think, I mean, just to talk about SEO, right? Like monumental changes, right? The early days of SEO, I mean, the pioneers there were, I mean, it's Crazy Egg, Neil Patel, Kissmetrics. Those were both his companies. And he was the first one to really become well known for using long form content on blogs, like company blogs. And you didn't have to do much back then. Write long content, publish it, people would find you, business built. Because nobody was doing it. And then people started to catch on. Neil did a really good job of sort of like building his meta personal brand, meaning like, I'll teach you how to do content marketing. And the trick with Google, though, is that there's only 10 spots on the front page, right? And so the more and more people compete for a spot, the more competitive it gets. And so today, 14 years later, like Google's gone through major algorithm. I remember when Penguin and Panda came out, like Penguin in particular, like I got phone calls that day because all the hacks and stuff that these SEO people were doing were just, they all of a sudden, like all their traffic vanished overnight because Google just like smashed all of those like hacks and stuff that you used to be able to. I mean, people were out there, like they'd write one article and then they'd run it through an article spinning software and then publish like 50 versions of it on all these different like directory sites that were just these dark sites all over the web. And that gave them like 50 backlinks every time they did it. And it was this whole world where it wasn't really about, for SEO specifically, it wasn't really about creating good content that people like. It wasn't focused on the reader at all.
Right.
It was focused on all these different sort of algorithm tricks to trick Google into putting you on the first page. And like, look, I get it. Like if there's an opportunity to put yourself on the front page of a place where like thousands and thousands of people can find your business, like do it. Right. But that's not my skill set. That's not your skill set, right? Like we're writers, we're communicators. And what we're good at is telling stories. And later I learned how to do the marketing side of it, meaning like positioning, not just telling stories, but telling stories that put people into the place where they'll eventually like be like, oh yeah, like I need this product. You've explained this problem to me to the point that I need this. So that has always been sort of a classic skill of marketers, like forever, right? Like long before we were doing content marketing. And so what I've seen, it's funny in that like the stuff that works today is actually old, very, very, very like old school marketing, meaning like storytelling and hooks and like the old copywriting stuff from the 20s that was out there. It's much more classical, like professional marketers are content marketers now, not like, I mean, in the early days, there were these like college students who figured out that they could add meta descriptions and get a site to rank, right? Like, so they would charge companies like a $3,000 a month retainer and just tweak the meta description on 5 or 6 blog posts every month.
Oh, wow.
but it worked, right? It wasn't like they were price gouging. Like what they did was like their skill was that they understood the algorithm enough to do this. And none of that stuff works anymore. These days it's just what it's always been about in marketing, which is how can I tell a story that speaks to a problem that somebody in my target market like is really struggling with, and how can I help them? And I think every time I lean into like, how can I help people? Like, how can I help people solve a problem? And that's with the products that I create. That's with the content that I create. That's what works today. And that's why I love doing this work, which is like, I genuinely get an opportunity to help people. Yeah, I'm doing marketing. I got an angle, like I got an objective. But I don't work with companies where I don't believe in the product, and I
I love your story in that like, you're like, no, I am your patient. Like I am your customer.
Quite
like,
literally. Yes.
This is life-saving stuff we're talking about here. And so, when you sit down to do your work, like you're coming at it from a place where you're like, you deeply understand the value of, what that company provides.
Absolutely.
And I think that comes through in the work. Right. And
I hope so.
That stuff, like when you have product market fit, I mean, like you personally, as a freelancer, when you find your market, it just, you can feel it. I mean, I remember I wrote like, or in the early days, I just took any project, right? I wrote the copy for this guy who like was launching a new potato chip brand. And so I wrote the copy that went on the back of his potato chip bags. And I was like,
that's
what
great.
am I doing? What am I doing? And I did a good job with it, but like, I wasn't feeling passionate about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But today I get to work for companies who are like, like the product I'm working on now is a product that like takes away major stresses for software companies around the world. Like these little 2-3 person shops that are building software, trying to make a living in like places where, it's not like tech hubs. I'm not like,
yes.
These are just like solo entrepreneurs who are trying to build things. And like, that's what I'm trying to do too. So like, I understand that crew deeply. So I get to help them, which is pretty great. And I think anytime you get to sort of find a place like that, you can feel it. And that comes through. And that's what the market needs right now. Is not more dumpster diving content, not more people who are just like, you get hired by an agency, they give you a keyword, you go out and you write a story about gutters or, or some sort of some sort of whatever. And look, there's nothing wrong with that work, right? That's honorable work. Sometimes you just got to pay the bills, right? But the more you can find projects that align with things that you're passionate about, the better you will do. And the more valuable that work will be for the people that you do it with. And that's 100% what Google wants you to be doing. Like that's what Google is trying to reward. And that's what the market is. I mean, that's where the market is right now, is that. And so that wasn't true in 2012, so anyway, I think that's it. I think there's tons more that I could say on that, but I'll stop.
I'm sure.
I'll say this.
Go ahead.
Like the just to say it, like where content marketing is going is quality. That's where it's going. Like more and more and more, it's all about quality. And I think there's an element of fear in the market from writers in particular about AI. Oh no, AI is going to come take our jobs.
Yes.
I'll tell you, I have this community of group of content marketers. So I get the people who are building the AI tools in my DMs asking me to look at them and then like promote them. And I looked at a bunch of them and I'll tell you that the people who are making the most like positive impact with those tools are the people who aren't using them to replace their writing skills. They're using them to enhance their writing skills.
Interesting.
So it's not that AI is coming to replace you. It's that the best writers of the future will know how to use AI tools to like do what they do better. That's
right.
That's what's coming. And so I think that's actually a really big opportunity for people who are writers. If you like right now, if you're just sitting there thinking like, how do I like differentiate myself for the future? Like if you start to learn how to use these tools to really make your work better, like, oh my goodness, like that's a massive opportunity. It's a good sales talk track too. Oh yeah, I use these tools. This is how I do it. Like, here's how I get better results using them. So that's coming from a technology standpoint. I mean, Google itself is an artificial intelligence. That's what it is. It's not a search engine. So we're all using AI. We have for years.
Right.
We just didn't realize it. And so from a tactical standpoint, that I think is where the market is going in terms of technology. But it is in the service of quality stuff. And you can't just feed a keyword into a machine to get that. The keyword into the machine can give you all the background and the research, but then you have to bring your own, you have to take it to that next level to do something with that content that nobody has ever done, that's better than anything has ever done
and that's how Google will reward you. So,
Right. Yeah, that's interesting to hear your perspective, because obviously I know the way things are right now, but I was not writing blog posts for SEO in 2012, so it's interesting to me to hear. But
good writing is not going to go out of style. I'll tell you that. So
yes,
it is actually, I think, a really good time to be a writer, because it's not like things are going to get less. It's not like the activity of the internet is going to get like less. Like the internet's just going to grow. It just is.
Oh, yes.
So, cool. Well, Hailey, what's one thing that you want people to remember after listening to this conversation?
One thing I want people to remember, I would say, remember that no one else has your unique life experience, and that might be the perfect way to position yourself to potential clients.
Love it. That's your competitive edge, even if you didn't even realize it.
Yes.
And then what's your answer to the group screening question? I can't remember how long you've been in the group, but I ask everybody this question, which is for fun. You get to pick one superpower. It's a flight, teleportation, or the ability to stop and start time on command.
Ooh, I would say the ability to stop and start time on command, for sure. I don't always have a lot of usable hours in the day. I spend a lot of time resting, lots of time at medical appointments. So if I could just, stop time and get more things done, get ahead on my to-do list, that would be ideal.
I love it. I told this, I was talking to Carly on a previous podcast. If you're listening to this and you listen to the previous podcast, then you heard this conversation too, which is like, the more I ask that question, the more I love people's answers, because there's no wrong answer.
Right. I mean, they all sound great,
Right. And, but as the dad in me, my original answer to this question was always the stop and start time like a family. That's the one personally that, like, oh man, if I could just like stop time and just take a moment to just breathe for a half an hour sometimes, that would be the best. So Hailey, how can people find you? There's one other question I didn't ask you. It's a really important question. So who is your perfect ideal client? Who, if they're listening to this, or if they know somebody who's like this, they're like, oh man, like we need to talk to Hailey. She sounds like she can really help us. Like, who's your perfect client?
Ooh, I can think of a lot, but I'd say my perfect client would be a children's hospital. I would absolutely love to work with a children's hospital to write their blog posts or web copy or whatever that would look like, resources for their patients, for those patients' parents. That would be pretty high up there on the list of my dream clients.
I love it. How can people get in touch with you if they'd like to connect?
My website is thehardworkingcreative.com. I am also on LinkedIn as Hailey Hudson, and then I'll share my Instagram because I'm a millennial Gen Z, so I'm on Instagram the most. My Instagram is Hailey_H_writes.
Cool. I will put all of that in the group description, or in the podcast notes. In the show notes is the word I'm looking for, and I can't find. Thanks, Hailey. I really appreciate you coming on this morning.
Thanks for having me, Nathan.
Oh, there's so much there. I just listened back through the episode, and I think if I were to, I try to pull out sort of one thing that that stood out to me in the interview, and in my notes. I think there's really two here. So I think the choice to disclose or not to disclose a disability, I think, is one that that's a very personal decision, right? And so in Hailey's case, she's able to disclose it in situations where it's a benefit to her, and that ties into the second point that I wrote down, which is that I love what she said at the end, which is, remember that no one else has your life experience, and that might be the perfect way to position yourself to clients. That's advice that I've given to other people in other situations, but I think Hailey's story represents that in a really tangible way, in that this thing that really is a disadvantage in many ways is, in some contexts, when positioned correctly, it can be a bit of a superpower, in that it allows you as a content creator to have a really unique, or it allows her, at least as a content creator, to have a really unique perspective and to do a really good job in a way that really, like, I would not be able to do in that same situation. So maybe there's something like that in your life. Maybe there's something like that in your background. Maybe you have, like what I had, the failed experience of attempting to be an engineer that you think might be a failure, that when framed correctly could actually be a bit of a superpower for you. So I hope you found that helpful. I hope you found that encouraging. One logistics note for y'all. I just got off the first office hours with Nathan, which is part of the premium subscription now to members of the Content Marketing Lounge. And so that was a blast. And I look forward to doing lots more of those. That's one of many benefits that you can pick up if you sign up for a premium subscription. You can find links to information about the premium subscription. I'll put that in the show notes for this episode. So if you're listening on a podcast, it'll be there. If you're listening on YouTube, it'll be in the description. And then also that information is always available at the top of the group in the pin post in the announcements section. So Hailey, big shout out to you. Thank you so much for sharing your story and coming on. And to everyone else listening, take care of yourself, be good to yourself, and I will talk to you again very soon.